Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Hunt Lift Eat podcast, brought to you by Hunt Lift Eat Official. I'm Carter, and I'm back with the one and only bearded wonder himself, Mr. Perry Eisner. What's up, Perry?
So, not much, man. 2 weeks in a row. Well, I don't know when this one's going to come out, but it's been 2 weeks in a row for me and you.
We're on a roll.
Oh, we are. It feels like the good old days.
Oh, is he froze or am I froze?
I lost you guys.
Perfect.
Yeah, I lost you too, Carter.
Cool. Hey, we're going to rock it with this storm, and we're going to do the best we can. Let's go ahead and introduce our esteemed guest this week. We got Mr. Chad Ryker, out-of-state hunter himself, jumping on with us. So, Chad, welcome to the podcast, man.
Thank you. Esteemed might be a stretch. I really wish I had a cool name like the Bearded Wonder. That was awesome.
Gotta work on the beard, man.
I just got rid of it, actually. So I started mine in about September last year. No, it was in October. And I let it go all the way through my January deer hunts. And then it was time to shave it. I can't take it. Can't take it. We were talking before the show. I'm prior military guy. So there's something about just being shaven that I'm used to. And the beard drives me crazy. So I stick it out for a little bit.
I thought it would be the opposite. Once you get out, you just rock it like full-fledged.
Some guys do. I can't. So I had my hair was long. I'd let my hair go for about 4 months or whatever that time frame was, and then I had my beard, and it was time to let it. It was time to cut it. I was a mess, man.
That's cool, man. Well, Chad, we got a lot of vets and active duty members on our team and on our listener base as a whole. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you did with your time in the military?
Sure. So I had plenty of time in the military. I retired in 2020, right before COVID, and when I joined, I joined the military on September. Well, I won't say I joined, but I walked into the recruiter's office on September 12th, 2001, the day following the attacks in New York. And walked in, started talking to him, and had made the decision that I was going to join the military. And then I ended up joining a couple months later. You know, you got to do all the tests, and you got to go through and the process. But I ended up joining in March, and joined. I came in as a 19 Delta Cavalry Scout. The recruiter got me on that one. I laugh about that a little bit. I was one of those guys that scored pretty high on all of my tests when I was coming in, and they told me, you can do whatever you want, right? You pick a job, you can do whatever you want in the military. And unfortunately for me, probably fortunate for the recruiter, but like 2 days before that, I had watched the movie Black Hawk Down, and I walked in there just ready to fight, man. Like I was so ready for combat and just, I was ready to go. So I joined as 19 Delta Cav Scout, did that for several years, and had a pretty rough go there. I had a couple of roadside bomb incidents, and then I had another incident with a sniper that got me instead of me getting him. So that kind of transitioned my career. I had decided that that combat arms life was a bit rough, and I moved on. So then I went military intelligence and ended up finishing my career as a warrant officer, military intelligence warrant officer. So I never complained. I had to retire early, so I retired at 18 years, and it was kind of a bummer. I wanted to do my 20, and the doctors just wouldn't let me at that point. I had some back issues that were pretty bad, and the doctors said that's it, because I was trying to deploy. Like I was one of them hard charging dudes, and I'm over there telling my doctor, like, you're not going to keep me from going to Afghanistan. And the doctor laughed a little bit. And the next morning I had paperwork on the desk, that was, you're getting out, you're done. So they got me, but it all worked out, man. And I served my 18 years, which I think was pretty good. 18 years. I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And now you get to talk hunting and chase critters all over the United States, just carrying a rifle
all over. Yep. I still work for the government. I work for the Air Force now. Just a civilian, but it does allow me a lot of time. Right. And that retiring from the military and then taking this job put me in New Mexico, which is in the heart of some really, really great wild game out here and some Western hunting. Got beautiful elk out here in New Mexico and some great deer. Just north, I've got Colorado, Arizona's right next door. So there's a lot of really, really good hunting out here. So, this worked out pretty good to just retire and end up here in New Mexico.
Are you from that area originally, Chad, or did you grow up somewhere
No,
else?
born and raised Indiana boy. So,
Gotcha. Midwest. Huh?
born and raised in Indiana. Never really hunted when I was young. I did with my dad a little bit, growing up, and I had a bow and I used to shoot target stuff when I was a kid. And then I started chasing girls and, found Bush Light beer and whatever. And, priorities change a little bit there when you're a young guy. And then I joined the military. So then I was always gone. And I've rarely I did very, very little hunting. Later on in my military career, I met my wife, and my wife was from West Texas. And I had gone out, her dad is a ranch manager out in West Texas. And we would go out on those ranches and see some really nice bucks, and we'd see a lot of cool animals. And that's kind of where my big game bug started, was hunting out in West Texas and chasing Barbary sheep and mule deer out there. So, and then it just took off like a rocket from there, man. Once I got that bug, it was over.
You were hooked.
That's a hell of a place to cut your teeth on big game hunting when you can hunt all of the crazy species they have down there in West Texas.
Yeah, it was really cool. And having that opportunity, because, all that area out there is just private land. It's all owned. It's big ranches, big cattle ranches. And it's kind of hard to find good spots to hunt, but I had access to my father-in-law at the time. Back then, he was managing a ranch that was 55,000 acres, and we could just cruise on that. And, I mean, you could spend all day out there just shooting coyotes and looking at deer. And there's some elk herds that run out there. So we'd see elk and just really, really cool stuff. So very spoiled for that.
Shit, on 55,000 acres, you can spend all week and not see the same rock twice.
Yeah, it's a lot of land. And, then it was just drive around in the truck and shoot animals. And then as I kind of got more into the Western style hunting, with the backpack and boots on your feet and really walking around, then he would drop me off in the middle of nowhere on these ranches, and I would just kind of make my way back and hike through some pretty cool terrain and get back in some of those real deep canyons and spend a lot of time back there. And I started seeing some really cool stuff back in those deep canyons that nobody'd seen in years and years, because them ranchers, they don't get out of those trucks, and they might go horseback or something, but they don't walk into those big deep canyons. It was really cool. And I still get out there every now and then. He's on a different ranch now, and it's about the same size. That one is a little bit different though. The hunting is kind of limited. The landowner doesn't necessarily really appreciate people hunting out there. So I'll still go look at game out there and just kind of spend time, but don't really get to hunt out there.
That's fantastic, man. Then how did that kind of transition into what you do now? When did you kind of make that jump? And then can you tell us a little bit about how would you consider what you do now?
Yeah. So what I do now, I just do a lot of Western hunting now. That's, I draw the tags, and I'm sure we'll talk about the Western big game draw system and tag system, because it's completely different than that Eastern stuff. I made that transition. So at the time, I was bouncing around in the military. When I started Western hunting, I was in San Antonio, Texas. I was stationed out there, and there wasn't really much to hunt. If I wanted to go hunt, I had to go out to West Texas to the ranch, or I had a couple of contacts that had small little feeder lots, where they had deer feeders set up, and you could go out there and they'd spread some corn and the deer come in, you shoot the deer, right? Like, it's not really a big challenge. And a lot of pigs. So we'd hunt a lot of pigs and little whitetail bucks and does and stuff. And that, to me, man, I think throughout my military career, I had so much adventure and just so much like there was just a lot going on, especially early in my career. And there came a point where I just kind of wanted some kind of adventure. Um, it's kind of a funny story. I will try to make this quick, but this was how I was introduced to Western hunting, right? So I was on a deployment down in Belize in Central America. And I didn't even know what a podcast was at that time, right? I had no idea what a podcast was. And one of my buddies was like, hey, man, we were driving. We spent a lot of time in the car doing missions and doing stuff. And he's like, well, the radio down here sucks and everything's in Spanish and we don't speak Spanish. So we're going to do podcasts. Right. And so he put on a podcast and I was like, holy crap, what is this thing? Like, this is incredible. What a great way to like share information and just, that's really engaging. So that was kind of in the back of my mind. Like this is kind of a neat deal. Later on in that deployment, we were shacked up in a hotel somewhere, and I had my computer and I was on YouTube. And at the time I did a lot of long range shooting and I was really into long range shooting stuff. But I was on YouTube, and you know how sometimes YouTube just it'll navigate you into videos that you are not interested in at all, right? Their algorithms do that. And I ended up watching this video, and it was Randy Newberg, if you're familiar with Randy Newberg.
Oh yeah.
And it was one of those ones where Randy Newberg is talking about the Western hunting and how it's so accessible. And he was talking about public lands and how you can access public lands. And that was so foreign to me because I grew up in Indiana, and I think it's a lot like Georgia, where you got to lease your ground that you're going to hunt, or you have to know somebody, or, grandma's got a few acres that she lets you hunt deer on. And the West is totally different. So here I am, I'm looking for an adventure, and I'm figuring out what podcasts are. And now I'm starting to figure out what elk hunting is. And it all just kind of came together, and I thought, well, that's it. I'm going to go elk hunting, except I don't know how to do that. So I want to talk to people that do that. I think I'm going to start one of these podcast things, right?
Yeah.
And so I got home from Belize. I got home from that deployment, and I fired up a podcast. And like you said in the beginning, dude, we'll just figure it out, right? And I figured out what a podcast was. I figured out how to do all of that stuff, and ended up. I was supposed to hunt that first year, and I ended up with another. I had to go to Honduras and Guantanamo Bay. So it and all of that was happening like right in September timeframe. So I didn't get to go that year, but I ended up going the following year. And that was my first trip out west. And that was Colorado elk. Like, I think that's a really good introduction to elk hunting. Most people start in Colorado. So it was there was a whole lot going on there, man. And it was just a guy with a little bit of spare time trying to figure stuff out. So pretty cool stuff.
Did you kill one on that first trip?
Yeah, it was all winging it, man. And in the very beginning, I had a partner who started not this podcast. So I have two podcasts. I have this. I have Out of State Hunter, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. And then I have another one that's called Backcountry Rookies, and Backcountry Rookies has been around for like 7 years, I think 6 or 7 years. I started that a long time ago. That thing's been through ups and downs, and it's been all around, man. At one point in time, I had like 230 some episodes, and I lost all of those, and I had to restart the whole podcast and start a new feed. And so I had to completely restart that thing and get it up and going again. And then I started Out of State Hunter, and Backcountry Rookies was started because like I said, I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't know as far as hunting goes. And I thought, well, I'm just going to put it out there, because if I don't know what I'm doing, there's other people that don't know what they're doing. And there are Backcountry Rookies also. So we started that. Me and my buddy started Backcountry Rookies, and our schedules just didn't jive. Like, we were having to, I was having some pretty big name people come on the podcast in the beginning, and I was having to cancel with them at times because they're like, schedules just didn't match, and that didn't work for me. I felt terrible canceling on some people, and well, any time I have to, but so he went his own way, and I went my own way and kept the podcast going. But Yeah. Yeah. It's been a journey, dude. This whole thing has been a journey for sure.
Yeah, podcasting is it's a journey for sure. Carter and I have experienced some of those ups and downs as well, as has the HLE podcast as a whole. And I mean, it's a great way to learn what you don't know, and figure some
Mm-hmm.
things out. And but it's man, it's such a great way to talk to fascinating folks like yourself, folks from all different walks of life, all different skill sets, levels of experience.
Yeah.
Um, it really is an awesome resource for beginners, for new folks that are interested. You think about all the new hunters that came about um, during COVID, and what a tremendous resource all of I mean, there's an absolute wealth of information out there with all of the
Mm-hmm.
podcasts um, regarding hunting.
Yeah. Oh, there's so much information out there. I love it. I can't listen to all of the podcasts that I want to. It seems like I'm either editing my own, or there's a couple out there that I tune into on a pretty regular basis. And the bad thing is a lot of those aren't even hunting related.
Right.
There's some other topic that I'm interested in as well. And I get a lot of hunting content, a lot of conversation, because just through the podcast, I talk to people all over the place.
It's true,
So
isn't it? I never thought about that
yeah,
before. I used to listen to podcasts nonstop on the way to work and
yeah,
at the gym and all the time, and now I don't.
yeah,
Because I'm
yeah, yeah, totally.
always doing a podcast thing.
Unless it's another topic, there's some that I'll listen to. Like if there's I subscribe to a ton of different podcasts, and they'll pop up, and I'll see that there's a new show. And if it's a topic that I'm really interested in, or it's something that's kind of new to me, I'll listen to that. But for the most part, I do my own, I'll edit stuff, and that's about all I do. And then you know how it goes, right? You get tired, and I've taken some breaks in the podcasting where I've gone like 3 months without recording a show,
Yeah.
which people say just you should never do that. But man, you get tired, and it's kind of exhausting. And then life gets busy, and there's things going on in the background, and you just got to step back. And I've always told my wife, like, you're first, if there's something, if I need to take a break, I'm not taking a break from you. The podcast will shut down for a couple of months, and we'll, you'll be number one. But she's been really supportive too, that's helped a lot. In the beginning, she was like, what the hell is this? What are you doing, man? Like a podcast? And after it went on, and she saw that it was something that was going to continue, she started to support it, and she's like, okay, well, this is actually pretty cool. That
makes all the difference, having a supportive wife. And there's a pro tip for all you young podcasters out there: don't put it in front of the old marriage. That
yeah,
you gotta keep the wife happy. That stays on the front burner. The podcast,
Not
if
just
it has
podcasting.
That's hunting in general, or anything else for that matter.
Yep. So we sit down every year, man. This is something my wife and I do every year. Well, in the West, so some of your listeners may not know how the West works, but every year there's applications and there's draw seasons, right? And there's, like, right now we're in the middle of application season, and for almost all of the Western states, and that usually starts around now, and then it'll go through. Gosh, it kind of goes all year long, but anyway, my wife and I sit down in January, and we talk about what vacations does she want to do, what plans do I have, and we sit down and we put everything, kind of a rough draft, on a calendar, so that throughout the year we both kind of know what plans are. And this year it just so happens that there's some stuff that came up in late September, and then we've got some other stuff planned for early October. And for the listeners, that's elk rut right there. Like the last 2 weeks of September and the first week of October, it's on, and I'm shut down this year, so I won't be out for the rut. But whatever, man, it's okay. I'm okay with that, I guess. I keep telling myself I'm okay with it.
It's a good strategy.
Yeah.
And good. I want to talk to you about your strategy, and that's a whole different part of the strategy that people may not forget because they got screaming bulls at the front of their mind, right? And
Yep.
really, you got to make sure everything at home is taken care of so that you can go abroad and enjoy the trip and make sure everything's squared away there. If everything's squared away at home, you get to do these opportunities more often and enjoy them, right? You want to enjoy the trip when you're on it.
Right. And if you don't have service or something, maybe, or you don't have an inReach or a satellite communicator, having that in the back of your mind and knowing that everything was caught up and that everything was done before you went on that trip, it leaves you a little bit settled when you're up in the mountains and you can't make that phone call every day, that text message home or whatever. You might only get something out every 2 or 3 days, but just knowing that you left stuff in good order gives me peace of mind when I go to the mountains. So, and it gives my wife peace of mind too. It really helps to get caught up. And I'm usually running around like a chicken with my head cut off 2 days before, like haven't packed yet, need an oil change in the truck. Like I need 15 different things done and I'm out mowing the lawn and, I'm still doing all of those honey-do lists to get it right. And when I first started, that stuff really bothered me. Like, oh God, I'm going to miss an opportunity or I'm going to miss something. And now I'm just kind of like, I'll get there. I'll get out there, whatever. It's not the end of the world if I'm 2 hours late to camp or a day late or whatever. It works out.
Yeah, always does.
Yeah.
Chad, you talked about looking for that that adventure, right? When you first got into Western hunting, and as a lot of listeners will be able to relate to, just the process of trying to figure out the Western system with tags and draws and units, and if you are private land hunters primarily, like Carter and I were, and it sounds like you were, public land and which pieces you have access to, and all of the different moving parts. That in and of itself can be an adventure, right? And it can be very daunting. I've dipped my toes into the Western world of hunting a couple of times in recent years, as has Carter, but there's still a lot to learn and a lot to figure out. So, walk us through what that process looked like for you and how you figured some of that stuff out, and like what strategies you use in terms of where you're going to focus your applications for points and units, and just unpack that a bit.
Yeah, my first couple of years were an absolute disaster.
Yeah.
The planning, I like all of it. But luckily we have podcasts, right? We have things like this where we can kind of talk through them, and there's a million YouTube videos out there where you can watch and try to get some of that knowledge. My first, so I was really, really lucky because I did have the podcast, but my first year, my first 3 years, I went to Colorado and bought over-the-counter tags, right? Which, like I think I said it earlier, I think a lot of people do that. It's a really good barrier to entry to go to Colorado because you can just go to Walmart, right? And you can get that tag and you can be in the mountains for now. There's some things that may be changing in the years to come there, but for now you can still do that. Luckily, I had recorded a podcast with a guy, and he was explaining to me the point system and how all the point stuff worked. So I kind of had some insight to that, and it just kind of clicked. So I was buying these over-the-counter tags, and I was going and hunting in Colorado. But meanwhile, I was buying points in Arizona, I was buying points in Colorado, and I was buying points in Wyoming. And so now I have points in a lot of really great states, and I have enough points to where I can really start drawing some pretty good tags. But those first few years, just sucking it up and going over the counter and being out there in the mountains with other hunters all over the place, that gave me, which I was learning, and still learning all the time, but I didn't know what I was doing. So, and if you don't really know what you're doing, then why not go out there and do it in over the counter unit, instead of burning like 10 points and drawing a dream elk tag in Arizona or something like that and have never hunted elk before. I figured, why not, right? Like I'm going to learn something every time I go out there. And I've learned a ton, man. I've learned so much. Like the progression has been pretty amazing. Me and my buddy, we were out at deer camp in in Arizona this just last month in January, and we were just kind of talking about like where I started and then the progression, and kind of where I'm at now, and success rates and just being a better hunter. And a lot of that came from just going out and trying it, right? Trying stupid stuff and trying. I had a guy one year, I was out solo hunting. I think this was my third year in Colorado, and I was trying to bugle, trying to call in elk, right? And I was getting responses, and I called in some really nice bulls. I never really had an opportunity, but I had bulls close to me, right? I had bulls within like 10 yards at one point, but there's just no shot. But I was doing this bugling, and I was trying to call, and I was doing all this stuff. And later I run into this guy at the trailhead, and he's packing out a bull. He had shot one up in the same mountain, probably the ones I scared off. But he was like, "Hey, what was that you calling up there?" And I was like, "Yeah, man, that was me. What'd you think?" And he goes, "Well, I'm just going to say that was one of the most interesting techniques that I've ever heard. But anyway, you just keep it up. And one of these days, So in a very polite way, that dude told me that my calling was absolutely terrible. And, but I didn't think it was bad. Like I said, I was calling bulls in. I had plenty of them around. I just couldn't take a shot. But yeah, it was pretty bad. And I think just having those opportunities like that and being able to be in that situation and to see bulls and to have them running at you and coming in and it was lessons learned for sure. It was pretty cool. But yeah, that dude, he was like, yeah, it was definitely an interesting technique. Anyway, good luck.
That reminds me of my turkey calling abilities. Yeah. It's like, yeah, I can get a gobbler to sound off, but it's like you have to actually convince him that there's a hen there that he wants to that he's interested in, and it's going to get within 30 yards or whatever of. It's like you kind of have to know how to actually talk turkey, and there's a big difference between just getting one to respond and getting one to actually play a little bit and come within shotgun range.
Yeah. Me and a couple of buddies, we were out hunting in the Gila Mountains out here in New Mexico one year. And these dudes, both of them are fantastic hunters. These dudes are awesome. And they're both calling, man, and they couldn't get a bull to respond. Like they were struggling, right? No elk were talking. They were cow calling. They were doing it all, trying all of it, man. And I was like, well, let me see that bugle tube. I wasn't even carrying a bugle tube. I was kind of embarrassed at how bad of a caller I was. And so I take a diaphragm call and I take the bugle tube and I ripped off. I don't even know what it was, man. My buddy still calls it the Sasquatch Coyote bugle. And I'll be damned. I'm not kidding you. Within about 10 seconds after I did this just random, I don't even know, screech, that this bull sounds off from down in the canyon down below us. And I was like, what are you guys doing? Like, I'm glad I'm here to call these bulls in for you. So, and I don't know how it worked. They're convinced that it was just so bad that bull had to finally respond to it. So,
dude, I believe it. Some of the worst elk calls I've ever heard have been from actual elk. So you never know.
Yeah, that's a fact. Yeah, they don't call perfectly. They're not winning competitions.
No. Yeah, that's cool, man. Well, I think I know you from out of state hunter, and I think the entire idea behind what you do, right? Trying to lower the barrier and teach people the rules and regs, the ins and outs. Am I froze again?
I lost you again.
Perfect. Am I froze again?
No, you're back.
Oh, I'm back. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I think the entire idea behind what you do, right, helping non-residents learn the ins and outs, the rules and regs to Western hunting is a massive value add to social media, to the podcast world, to all of it, in a world where there's like a lot of BS. I think what you're doing is freaking awesome, because wading into this game, this application game in the Western states when you have no prior knowledge about it's daunting, right? I remember when I first learned about preference points, I was like, cool, I'm going to buy 50 preference points in Colorado. Like, whatever that costs, I'm going to buy 50. And they were like, oh, one per year. And I was like, What?
Yeah, you can only get one.
I have to
Yeah.
wait. I have to wait 20 years. That's crazy, right? So like,
Mm-hmm.
just that right off the rip, right? And then I'm sure you've experienced all the lovely hunting Facebook forums that exist out there where people are just cutthroat and some of the worst individuals ever if you ask for help, you know?
Yeah. Not looking for a honey hole, just trying to figure out the unit, right? Trying to
Yeah.
find a trailhead. That's the way all Facebook started, it seems like.
Yeah, just cutthroat, man.
Yeah. So I started out of state hunter because of the madness, right? The Idaho, what really kicked it off was the Idaho over the counter draw. What it's not even a draw, but it's kind of a draw, and it's definitely not over the counter. But I was trying to navigate that. And so what that is Idaho every year on December 1st. So Idaho used to have over the counter tags, but they became so popular that they had to create some sort of system in order to manage that. And so what they did was they went to an online system. You have to log in on December the 1st, and you're given a random number when you log in. So you log in, and right at 10 o'clock, everybody that's on the online at that point in time gets a random generated number. This year I was like number 15,000 or something like that. And I know people that logged in a little bit late and they were number 60,000, of which you would think that you're not going to get a tag. And reality is I actually got a pretty decent tag being number 15,000. I drew a pretty good deer tag. But so learning that system in trying to learn that and knowing that was my first ever attempt at trying to go to Idaho, I was like, man, this is a mess. Like this, and the state is they manage however they want, right? That the game is the resource, or they're in charge of managing that resource, and they can do it however they want to. But it was just a mess. And then I started looking at some other states. I was looking at Wyoming, and I was like, Jesus, this one's even more complicated than going to Idaho. And I was familiar with Colorado, and I was familiar with Arizona, and obviously New Mexico. But my being familiar with them, I still knew that they were completely different than Idaho and Wyoming, and Arizona's different than New Mexico and Colorado. Like they're all just totally different. So I started kind of thinking, I kind of want to pull all these together. And I'd heard a few podcasts where they just kind of one off, like Randy Newberg. I'll use him again as an example. He'll talk about Wyoming elk on a show. And then he goes like 10 shows before he talks about another state and the draw process. And I just kind of started thinking, like, I want to collect all of this stuff. And I really want to talk to the right people. Well, who's the right people then? And that was the next question I had. And you guys are in the podcast world, and you've probably seen this out of other podcasts, and I've done it on my podcasts. You'll have a hunter that, like Carter, let's say you go to Arizona and you kill a gigantic bull next year. And then out of the blue, you become this guest on all of these podcasts, and you're like the expert on Arizona, right? Because you killed one bull in Arizona. And I hope that you do kill a huge bull in Arizona someday, but that doesn't mean that you're an expert in that state, right? You went there once, you did some e-scouting, you put boots on the ground, you hunted hard, you killed a good bull. Well, my thought was that's not an expert to me, and I want to bring people on who are value added. So I started reaching out to the state game agencies to bring them on and to talk about the rules and the regulations, because who knows it better than the people that write that regulation or proclamation. So I have them come on and we talk through. I have a kind of a show outline that I go through. It's just a series of questions, and we talk about the general geography and kind of makeup of the state and what game animals are throughout the state, in different regions throughout the state, and what's the application process, and is there a draw, or is it all over the counter? And I just try to get as much information out of that agency that I can. And I try to share that because I think that's the most value that you're going to get. And so far it's been pretty well received. A lot of people that they do go to Western states so my intent is to do all 50 states and then maintain those shows and keep them up to date. And right now I did all the Western states last year. And right now I'm kind of refreshing them or freshening those up as the draw process is going through, and if there's any major changes. And then I'll get back into the eastern states. And right now I've done several of the eastern states. But I'm kind of finding out that they're not as complicated because there's not a draw system. And some of them there are. There's your Virginias and Pennsylvanias and Kentuckys where you can actually draw an elk tag if you're lucky, and that's a little bit complicated. But for the most part, eastern states are pretty kind to non-resident hunters, and you can go to Walmart and buy a tag, and you can. Man, there's some states you can pile up 6 deer if you want to, like Missouri or Oklahoma. You can go into those states and shoot 6 deer. And I haven't done Georgia yet, so I'm not 100%.
You can
I'm
come
not
kill
super
12 here,
familiar.
Chad.
How many?
12.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, come down. Come down.
I went the wrong direction. I should have went east instead of west from San Antonio, man.
Yeah, dude, 12. 10 does, $2.
Nice. So Georgia's on my list. Georgia's I've always been interested in because I did live there for a while with the military. I just wasn't a hunter then, and I had a friend of mine that's all he did during season. He was always out hunting deer, and at the time I just wasn't that interested in it. But so it's coming up. It'll be probably this summer. I'll have Georgia come on. Yeah, that's it. And I take everything from the non-resident perspective because you got to, as a resident, you pretty much know your state, right? You have that system down if you've lived there a while. But when I talk to these game agencies, everything's from that non-resident perspective. So if you guys were going out to Arizona, what's the process? What's the cost? Is there anything you can't do? Are there certain things that you can do? It's really, really interesting to hear just the differences across each state. It's mind blowing how different each one is. It really is mind blowing.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Your home state compared to Montana is night and day.
Night and day.
Yeah.
New Mexico is a little bit unique because we don't have a point system, which makes it really nice because everybody has the same opportunity when they apply. Unfortunately, there's just not a lot of non-resident opportunity. So 84% of the tags are given to residents, which is great for me, but not so much for you guys. 10% is given to outfitters to outfitters, and then 6% is given to non-residents. So you could, if you want to pay an outfitter and you want to go through that service, then you could get up to, there's 16% that are allocated that non-residents can get, but 84% go to residents. There's still opportunity though. There's some really good opportunity. I was just talking to my buddy from Ohio the other day, and he was like, well, if I apply for New Mexico, what should I apply for? And I was giving him some units, and there's some really good units out there that have, 15-ish, 10 to 15% draw odds. So, I mean, there's a chance.
Yeah. Can't win if you don't play.
That's right. That's exactly right. Some states you got to pay up front, like New Mexico, you have to pay, you got to foot the whole bill. And if you wanted to apply for everything in New Mexico, I think it's like, I'm probably going to quote this wrong. I think it's like $7,000, and you have to pay all of that up front. Right. And then that money is gone for I think it's 2 months. So the draw closes it's out of your pocket for about a month and a half or something like that. And then they issue the refund for whatever you didn't draw. So if you didn't draw bighorn sheep, you get, a pretty good chunk of money back. And then there's other states where you don't pay up front at all. You just pay for a license and you apply, and then you sit and wait, like Arizona. You sit and wait, and then all of a sudden your credit card gets hit for $700, and you drew an elk tag. You just don't know which one yet.
Yeah, at
Chad,
the beginning. Go ahead, Barry.
I was gonna say when you're talking to these game agencies, are you talking primarily to wardens themselves, or are you talking to administrative folks that are helping write policies and look at all the data, population dynamics, et cetera, or is it kind of a mix of both?
It's a little bit of everything. I've talked to people from game wardens, biologists, game managers. Kentucky, I talked to the deputy director for the game agency. He came on the show. So it's really, I give them, I've had communications managers come on. I really give them the opportunity. So I send them the questions ahead of time, and it's pretty um, blanket questions. I don't adjust them really for any state. I let them do that. So I send them the questions, and I tell them if any of this needs to be changed, please change it. And if you have somebody that you want to come on and talk about all this stuff, then let's do that. And they'll always, they'll give me a point of contact, whoever that is, and whoever's a good speaker. The New Mexico was kind of fun because I actually went up to the headquarters. We sat down in a big conference room, and I was there with the guy that's in charge of actually the whole tag system, the tag allocation system. He was there, and then one of the lead biologists was there. So the lead biologist was able to talk about the game and the health of the game, and just all of the different species. And then the tag allocation guy, he was walking through the draw process and how's the draw work, and a lot of the insight on that. So that was really, really neat to be able to sit down with them. And
That's super cool.
Yeah, so I'm trying to weave in some new stuff this year too. I'll continue to do the game agency stuff, but I'm also trying to get some biologists to come on and talk kind of in generalities, right? So I'm working with Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation right now, and I'm trying to get one of their lead biologists to come on to just talk about elk in general and habitats. Where do they live? How do they live? Just all around everything. Let's just talk about elk and get to that. And then Mule Deer Foundation, I want to do the same thing there, and Wild Sheep Foundation, just to not only get some awareness about the species itself, but also I want to bring some awareness to some of these foundations that are out there, and some of that work that's being done on the back end that I think goes unrecognized a lot. Some of these foundations they're out there just creating hunting opportunities and buying land, or they might buy 2 acres of land that actually, once they own that, then it opens up 100,000 acres somewhere, and it was just blocked because of that little 2-acre parcel or whatever. And I just think that's amazing that there's people out there that are working that hard so that people can just go out and recreate. It's super, super cool. So I want to bring some awareness to that. We'll see how that goes. That's all just kind of brand new on the species stuff.
Yeah, our buddy Sam over at Infinite Outdoors, they do a lot of work with the Mule Deer Foundation. It seems like a solid operation, man. That doing a lot of work so that I can go chase my favorite animal a little more.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something that this year I told myself. I was about to build a new rifle, and I don't need a new rifle. I have a lot of rifles. And I was sitting there one day, and I was kind of texting with the rifle builder, and I texted him, and I was like, "Hey man, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to build that rifle. I'm just not going to do it." And later that day, I went on and I did a lifetime membership for the Mule Deer Foundation. So instead of buying that rifle and doing all of that, I just kind of spent that money elsewhere, did the lifetime membership. And then we have a banquet here for Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation here in Albuquerque. And I'll probably do the same thing there too when I go to that. I'm already a Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation member, but I just do the annual membership. And I think I'll just do the lifetime membership. So, but I think that was a much better way to spend my money than buying a new rifle that I seriously did not need. When you have to argue with your buddies and they're like, "Well, what's wrong with this rifle?" Well, nothing. Well, then what's wrong with this rifle? Well, nothing. Well, why do you need one in between those? Because I don't have it, right? Like I need that one too.
Yep.
And that's just not the case. So I think I can use my money better.
I like that approach.
Yeah, it works.
As you've been navigating these states, man, I was listening to your podcast that came out, I think Friday, about your application strategy. I don't want you to give away all of your secrets or whatever, but when you started thinking about, okay, well, let's digest this a little bit. Let's think like Randy does, right? Long-term, middle of the road, and short-term hunts. How do you kind of plan your strategy, maybe for somebody who's just getting into this or has no plan and is just buying points everywhere, which is what I did at the beginning?
Yeah. I don't think there's anything wrong with buying points everywhere, except that it's expensive. It can get
I
very
quickly
expensive.
realized, yeah, it
Because
is.
a lot of the states, we'll use Arizona. Oh, yeah, we'll just use Arizona, for example. So you have to buy a license in order to buy a point or apply. Either one, whichever you want to do. You still have to buy the license, and it's $160. And if you don't hunt there, if you don't do anything there, then you buy the $160 license, and then if you want the points, um, they're $15 each, right? So you can be into that really, really quickly for a couple $100 or more, depending on what species you apply for, and you don't even hunt that year, right? So that's $200. It's basically gone, and it's kind of that way all over. So when I first started my application strategy, I wasn't really looking for long-term goal. I think some people do that, and I think that there's people that are of the age that probably can do that, but I'm an older dude. I don't need to project something for 20 years from now. I just want to go out and I want to hunt. So I started to really kind of look at which states provided some of the best opportunity, and then what was closest to where I was at, right? Which at the time was San Antonio, Texas. So I really started to look at Arizona, New Mexico. You can't really gather points, but you can still apply there and try to draw tags. Colorado was a good opportunity. At the time, Wyoming was a pretty good opportunity. I think that it is still a good opportunity. They just made some changes this year that it can be pretty expensive to hunt in Wyoming if you want to do some of those limited tags. So I look at things more of a short, or I'd say mid to short term and midterm type of goal. Midterm being into that 5 to 10 point range. I can't imagine there's any states where I'm going to get over 10 points. You know,
Yeah,
I'm sitting on 5 of the, and I don't really do bighorn sheep. I don't do mountain goat. I don't do any of that. I enjoy hunting deer, antelope, and elk, and I just stick to those 3, and I just do it in my favorite states, which is I hunt New Mexico, Colorado, and Arizona. That's my big 3. And then I buy points in Wyoming. Last year I started buying points in Utah because Utah has a general season. You can buy general season tags in Utah, and it's like every 4 years you can expect to draw a deer tag, or less. You can draw some with like 1 point in Utah.
really.
Um, but then they have their limited entry and their general. And if you want to do the limited entry, you have to buy different points. You buy a limited point or you buy a general point. And if you want to do the limited, you're looking at years
It's like
before you
10
draw.
years, right?
And
17 years.
then 17, yeah, probably some of
Crazy.
those. It's crazy up there. But if you do the general, you can, and they're not great hunts, but there's deer out there, you know. The limited might be during the rut when you're applying for those tags, might be during the rut in a really killer area, whereas that general tag is maybe 3 weeks before the rut, and the areas are a little bit less. You're not going to expect to pull some 200-inch deer out of there, or 190-inch deer. I don't care. I don't need a 190-inch deer. I mean, it'd be neat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's cool if I don't get one. I don't care. And then Arizona is another one too for strategy purposes. Arizona has a couple of nuances that I think are important. It does cost money to apply there every year because you have to pay for that license up front. But Arizona, if you apply for 5 years straight, you get a bonus point, it's a loyalty point. So you get an extra point by just continuing to apply. Um, if you haven't started that, then maybe you don't want to get into that. But I didn't. I just started applying in Arizona, and now I can't. Now I have to apply because I don't want to lose my loyalty
No.
point. So every year I apply. But I also try to hunt coos deer. They have similar to Idaho. They have a system where you log on and you can buy I'm doing air quotes here, but it's an over-the-counter tag. They call it over-the-counter, or it's called a non-permit tag. And you can buy those mid-November is when they went on sale last year. But it gives you the opportunity to archery hunt any antlered deer and you can hunt coos deer or you can hunt mule deer. And there's a season in January that's an awesome season. That's when I always try to go out. There's another one in August. There's one in December, and I can't remember if there's one in between August and December. But you have 3 to 4 opportunities where you can just go archery hunt for like 3 weeks if you want to. And you can go out to beautiful Arizona, and you can still apply for deer. So if you have this over-the-counter tag, you can still apply for a rifle hunt, and you can hold both of those at the same time. So you can have your archery tag and your rifle tag.
Okay.
Whichever one you fill first. You can only take one deer, but you still have this opportunity all over Arizona to be able to go chase deer. And it's super, super fun, man.
Yeah. Especially
it's a blast.
January, right? That's a great option because a lot of seasons are closed already.
Yep. Seasons are closed. The weather is beautiful. Well, this year it wasn't great. Well, we had really, really good weather. It was like 45, 50 degrees during the day, and then it got kind of cool at night. And then we got a really crazy snowstorm that blew through, and we ended up getting about 4 or 5 inches of snow while we were out there, which wasn't a big deal. We're pretty lucky. Me and my buddy had both shot bucks probably 30 minutes before that snow came. Well, we found them about 30 minutes before the snow came in. So hauled them out of there, got them out, got them back to camp, got them skinned out. And before you knew it, we were 3 inches deep in snow. It was wild. But yeah, that's a super fun hunt. And it's an opportunity that's out there, and it's really kind of, well, I say inexpensive. I don't know what you guys pay for 12 deer, but it's probably not like that. Arizona deer tag is, well, the license is $160, and then the deer tag itself is like 300 and something. So you're into a deer tag for 500-ish bucks, $550, which is a little steep for
becoming standard, though. I feel like, each year it gets pricey.
More and more. And now we mentioned Wyoming earlier. So Wyoming just upped their what's it called, limited entry or whatever, their special draw, whatever it's called. That's a $2,000 elk tag, man. $2,000 for that thing. I ain't doing it. I'm not doing it.
$1,200 for an antelope. $1,200 for an antelope.
Yeah, that's a lot. So there is, I say I'll never do that, but I have points. I have a significant amount of points. Well, not significant, but I have a lot of points in Wyoming. And it could be one of those things where every like 4 or 5 years, if you just put a couple $100 back a year, well, more than a couple hundred, but it could be a thing to where you have a really, really good quality hunt every few years. I mean, I'm not paying $2,000 a year to go chase an elk, but if it was every 4 or 5 years and it was a group of dudes, and everybody's applying and maybe people draw, I could see that, or maybe once or twice, but I hope my fear is that other states are going to see that value on those, and that every state's going to start raising their prices. I just hope that doesn't happen.
Well, and
we'll see.
We've heard and seen, like, with the popularity of hunting out of state now, with folks like Carter and myself being traditional Eastern hunters, having that desire to go out west, and it just seems like that movement is becoming increasingly popular. Then you get the pushback from the residents who have been accustomed to this way of hunting their home state forever, and the agencies are responding to the increased hunting demand from out of state hunters, and as they should, right? Again, it's their resource that they're managing, but it can create some tension or some conflicts between your residents versus the out of staters. Is that something you've run into?
Yeah. So you want to upset a lot of residents? You start a podcast that's called Out of State Hunter, and you start telling everybody how to go hunt their state.
Well, that's what I was alluding to. I didn't want to say it like that, but
I've gotten some hate mail, that's for sure, through Instagram and stuff. And you know what, man? It's an easy response to that. It's without the non-residents coming in and being able to hunt there. Not only would the resident tags get increased significantly, right, but there's also no possible way that that resource can be managed at that point. There is just no way that the residents of Colorado can manage the elk herd that they have on their own. They would have to shoot like 3 or 4 elk each for every hunter in Colorado. And sure, I'm sure that they would love to do that, but that's a lot of meat, man. Like I don't know too many people that could eat 3 elk in a year.
Yeah.
And then sustain that, right? And next year have to go out and shoot 3 or 4 more, and then the next year after that and go and shoot 3 or 4 more. So without the residents, or without the non-residents or the out-of-state hunters going in and helping manage that resource, I just think that it would be a problem that some people aren't ready for. And there's usually the ones that do the pushback are the ones that probably could eat 3 elk in a year, and they say, hey, get out of here and stop hunting my state. I can manage this resource on my, we could do it on our own. Well, the reality is there's so many hunters that are just weekend warriors that go out there and they might get lucky and they hunt every few years, but I just think non-residents are an essential part of the hunting world, and people got to get used to it. But I certainly have gotten my fair share of, you're an asshole, stay out of our state and stop preaching to the state. Like I've gotten quite a bit of it on Instagram, and I just, whatever, man, I blow it off and I don't get too concerned about it.
Nah.
It is what it is. Usually the guys too. Well, I'm kind of a snoop, right? Like I'll go and look, and a lot of the times the people that are giving me the most shit, I'll go into their Instagram and I'll see, maybe they're from Idaho, and I see that Montana buck that they shot 2 years ago, and I see that Colorado elk that they shot 3 years ago, and I'm like, really?
Yeah.
So you can hunt wherever you want to, but I can't go up there and hunt in that state. See that quite a bit.
Yeah.
It is what it is, I guess.
Yeah. That's cool, man. With it being the midst of application season, Chad, what would you say are some of like the best kept secrets? Maybe not the best, but like the medium kept secrets. You got any tips that you'd want to share with folks? Stuff you want to put on your radar, kind of like that Utah hunt you just told me?
Yeah. Hunt elk in Georgia for sure. Always hunt elk in Georgia.
I bet we will soon.
No.
We'll have a season soon.
Yeah, there's herds all around it, right? Up north. You guys have them north of you.
Tennessee.
Yep.
Yeah.
Tennessee, Virginia, Pennsylvania.
Yeah. One of these years. No, I think some of those best kept. So if you're looking for opportunity, Colorado is always a really great option for elk, and Colorado has very good deer, mule deer. They also have good whitetail on the eastern side, but it's a lot of private land. But they do have really good deer, and they have the deer that you can draw with. There's some deers that you can draw with 0 points. And then if you have 1 deer point, it opens up a whole bunch of the state, right? Like you can draw some pretty good, I'm talking archery tags. Rifle tags are a little bit more difficult to get your hands on, but if you want to go out and try to hunt deer in September or something, 100% draw odds almost with 1 point. That's a really, really good option. Elk hunting in Colorado is a good option. There's a little thing that's kind of interesting about the Colorado draw system too. So you can actually apply for a point on your first choice, right? They have a deal where it's a hunt code and it just gives you a point, and that's it. So you get your point, but then you can apply for a second round hunt. You put a hunt code in there, and if you draw that, it doesn't take away your points. You get that bonus point, and you still get to go and hunt. Or you can do the point only, and then you get your bonus point, and then you can go out and buy an over-the-counter tag, and it doesn't take any of your points away from you. So there's some pretty good ways that you can still accumulate points and continue to hunt in Colorado. That's a pretty good secret. I always think New Mexico's a secret too. Like, I think there's a lot of people that don't apply because they think that, well, one, they don't want to pay a lot of money up front. But we do have great deer here. We have fantastic elk here. Like, we have some of the best elk in the United States, I think, here in New Mexico. And It's a little pricey because you got to pay up front, but there is opportunity and everybody has a chance, right? There's no point system. So you put your name in the hat and you could get drawn 3 years in a row, or you may not draw for 10 years, but everybody has the same chance whenever they apply. And yeah, I think Utah is pretty good having that general season Utah tag, because that's every 3 or 4. I probably have to go read on this, but I want to say that you need to burn those points every 4 years.
Hmm.
Like if you had 4 points, you need to go hunt them, or you can't get another one. I may be off on that one. It's been a while since I talked to Utah, but I know that on that general tag, you can hunt pretty frequently if you just go over there and try to hunt hard. That Idaho over-the-counter system, if you want to drive to Idaho, it works and you can log in. And if you log in, then there's opportunity. If you you don't even really need a low number. Like I said, I got a pretty good deer tag and I was number 15,000, and I returned it because I didn't have time for it this year, but I had one. It was December 1st and I already had a tag in my pocket for 2024. I already knew I could go hunting if I wanted to. So for military, you guys are pretty military focused. There is if you're a disabled veteran, there's disabled veteran stuff that you can do up in Idaho, and it's a very reduced price tag. I think you pay the resident rate, and you can get a disabled veteran tag in that over the counter, but they only do a certain number of them, and you have to have a pretty low number in that lottery system to get it. If you do, though, those are killer tags. And then Oregon has some stuff too. After I said Oregon, I can't remember what it is. I think active duty military and veterans, I think, both pay resident prices to hunt in Oregon. So it's pretty cheap to hunt there. I went there. I was still active duty at the time, but I went out there on a bear hunt with some buddies, and we paid resident price for bear. And we were from all over the place. None of us were from Oregon, and we still went out and paid the resident price. So yeah, Arizona is always a good opportunity. I think Arizona deer, that Coues deer hunt is super fun, and I always encourage people to check into that. You can draw Coues deer, or there are any antler deer. Well, no, the draw is Coues deer or mule deer, and you can draw Coues deer tags for pretty cheap, or not cheap, but pretty low points is what I meant. 3 or 4 points as a non-resident, you can get a really, really good Coues deer tag if you're into Coues deer. I love them little things, man. So
cool looking.
I love going to hunt.
Yeah.
They're cool and they're fun. They're so small. That one I pulled a packet. The one I shot last month, I went out to the freezer and pulled out a package of the backstrap steaks. And there was like 6 steaks in that package, and I probably ate half that backstrap just right there. The backstraps are only like 12 inches long on them, and they're absolutely delicious deer, but they're just not very big, man. You could pick them up by yourself. And I shot one a few years ago. He wasn't very big, but I put him where I hunt. There's like a skinning rack and a scale that's right near that area. So I just was curious, and I took him over and hung him up on the skinning rack, and he was 82 pounds.
Damn, that's awesome.
Yeah. He wasn't very big at all, but he ate good, man. I wasn't mad about it when I was eating his tenderloins.
Makes the pack out easy.
Yeah. Usually we just drag them.
Yeah.
We just drag them out, tie a rope onto them, and pull them out. There's no we'll just deal with them at camp, clean them up. Yeah.
That's awesome, man.
They're fun. There's a ton of opportunity out there as you go a little bit. That's all in the West. Like I said, out of state hunter, I kind of focus on the whole country, all 50 states. I think there's some really, really good whitetail opportunity out there. And I haven't even gotten it sounds like you guys have some fantastic opportunity. We have Oklahoma has good opportunity. Missouri has some really good opportunity. I think Ohio has some decent opportunity. I'd stay out of Indiana. Like when I talked to Indiana, they were like, yeah, good luck, man. I mean, you can come out here and hunt, but it's all private land basically. So Indiana would be pretty tough. I'm excited to get up into the Northeast area, which I'm going to start. That'll be this year. But I'm just real curious what opportunities are out there in the Northeast, and some of them little bitty states like Rhode Island. What are people doing up there? What are people hunting? I mean, I know it's whitetail, but I'm real curious. How their system works and if there's any public land to go hunt on, and just kind of what's going on over there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's there's a ton of opportunity out there, and it's all over the place, and it's you're putting out a wealth of information, and you've given Carter and I a lot to think about here just tonight. I mean, we just flew through an hour and didn't it feels like we just started talking. So I'm sure we could keep going, and I know I speak for Carter and all of the HLE listeners here. We appreciate what you're doing there, man, putting the information out for guys like us that are trying to learn some of these various systems and how to go out west and just travel. I mean, this stuff is so fun, and it's so there's so much to learn with traveling out of state, and for me, I just love that process. But it can be daunting at times, and that barrier of entry there is legit. And so to have someone like yourself that's doing what you can to kind of lower that, I think that's really valuable. So before we let you go, Chad, just shout out your social media, where folks can find you. We've alluded to it several times here, but just put it out there for the listeners, and hopefully folks can go check out a lot of your content.
Yeah, thanks for that opportunity to put it out there. Out of State Hunter on Instagram. That's all I have. I don't have a website or anything, and I don't have Facebook for Out of State Hunter. Backcountry Rookies is another resource too. So I'll plug that because I do a lot of this rules and regulation and the opportunity type stuff is Out of State Hunter. And I think it's a really, really good resource to know what opportunities are out there. But if the true barrier of entry is not just how to get a tag and, the licensing system and what opportunity is there, but there's a lot of guys that they don't even know where to start, right? They don't know where to start with even what kind of backpack do they need, or do they even need a backpack or boots or some of that gear related stuff, or maybe it's the mapping software that we use. There's so much stuff that can make Western hunting really, really difficult or seem really difficult. And I'll just say that I think Backcountry Rookies is a pretty good resource for that, because that's what I do that's where I learned how to Western hunt, was through Backcountry Rookies. And I've shared over the year, well, I told you in the beginning, I lost 230 shows or whatever, but there's like 60 or 70 shows up there now. And a lot of those are information based on what do I need to do, right? What do I need to do to even start the process to get out west with gear and tactics and calling techniques for elk hunting and different techniques for mule deer hunting and all of that stuff. So there's two really good resources right there that I think people that want to go west or should take a look at, and that's Backcountry Rookies, and then Out of State Hunter, of course. And I think that if my followers listen to this, I think there's a lot of people that want to go east, right? And I think that there's a lot of people that want to go hunt whitetails, and they don't know how to do that. They don't know where to begin. And I know that for a fact. I've talked to a lot of people, Western hunters, that are like, man, I would just love to go kill 12 whitetail. Like, oh my God, could you imagine doing that, right? And so I think there's a whole nother adventure out there on the eastern side. And I'm going to try to drive people toward you guys, because I think in the same boat there, right? There's a whole bunch of resources, and there's a barrier to entry for whitetail hunting just as much as there is for the Western hunting. I didn't know where to start. I had no idea for either one. I don't know where to go. Now I do. Now I know where I would go for whitetail. But anyway, there's resources all over. And I just think that having these podcasts and these opportunities is super, super cool. Hopefully people will listen.
We appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely, we do, and I agree completely. There's a ton more to talk about, so we'll have to have you back on sometime, Chad, and do a follow up, and maybe we can dive into some of that eastern whitetail world for some of you Western guys that may want to dip your toes into those waters. But
I'd be all about it. Every year, my two good hunting buddies are like, man, let's go hunt whitetail. But the problem is, have already like spent all my vacation time is already spent, and then when it comes time to go late November or something and try to hunt whitetails, I don't have any time left, so I just never get to do it.
That's always the limiting factor, is that time.
That's right. Time, energy, and money. It's gonna be, you can't have all three.
Yeah,
That's right.
Yeah. Guys, I really, really appreciate it, man. That was an awesome conversation. You were right. An hour went by, a little over an hour went by like super fast, man. So that was cool.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, our pleasure, Chad. We appreciate you coming on, man, and like I said, we'll definitely do it again. And yeah, listeners, go check out Out of State Hunter. Ton of good resources out there, ton of good information. And yeah, we appreciate it. Appreciate it, Chad. And as always, listeners, we
Cool.
appreciate the hell out of you guys. We'll talk to you next week.